Welcome to Worth Coin. What if the quarter sitting unnoticed in an old collection, coin jar, or forgotten drawer could turn out to be one of the most astonishing pieces of American pocket change ever discussed? The 1966 P quarter dollar may look ordinary at first glance, but collectors know that the smallest details can completely change the story of a coin. Some online claims have placed an extraordinary figure of up to $66 million on an exceptional example. But before you imagine every 1966 quarter is worth a fortune, there is a much more important mystery to uncover. What specific combination of condition, rarity, provenance, and unusual characteristics could make a coin dramatically more desirable? Stay with me until the very end, because we are going to examine the clues that separate an ordinary quarter from a potentially fascinating collector piece. And I also want you to stay tuned, because later in this series we will move to another quarter from a different era with its own incredible story. And I will not reveal its claimed value yet. But trust me, you will want to see why collectors would look twice at it. First, let us go back to the 1960s. Because understanding the history behind this coin is the first step toward understanding why 1966 is such an interesting year for American coin collectors. The United States Mint was operating during a period of enormous change in American coinage. The early and middle 1960s brought a major shortage of circulating coins, and one of the biggest changes came when the traditional silver content of several U.S. denominations was eliminated or reduced. The quarter dollar was one of the denominations affected by this transition, making the coins from this period especially interesting to collectors studying the evolution of American currency. The familiar Washington quarter design remained, with George Washington appearing on the obverse and the eagle design appearing on the reverse. But the metal composition and production environment had changed dramatically compared with earlier silver quarters. That historical transition is one reason collectors pay close attention to coins from this era. Now, there is something important we need to clarify before going any further. Claims that a normal 1966 quarter has a verified auction value of tens of millions of dollars should be treated with extreme caution. A spectacular headline can attract attention, but a coin's real market value depends on authentication, condition, rarity, documented provenance, and actual sales evidence. There is no reason to assume that an ordinary example suddenly becomes a multi-million-dollar coin simply because it carries the 1966 date. In fact, that distinction is exactly what makes coin collecting so fascinating. Two coins can look almost identical to an inexperienced eye, while one may have an unusual characteristic that sends collectors searching for their magnifying glasses. So what should you actually look for? Start with the basics. Examine the date carefully. Check the lettering. Study the rim. Look closely at Washington's portrait and the reverse design. Inspect the fields for unusual marks, doubling, die characteristics, striking problems, or other abnormalities. Then examine the edge. Many beginning collectors focus only on the face of the coin, but experienced collectors understand that the edge can sometimes provide important clues. A coin should also be examined under proper lighting and magnification, because something that appears to be an exciting mint error can sometimes be nothing more than damage that occurred after the coin left the mint. That distinction is critical. A genuine mint error is created during the manufacturing process, while post-mint damage happens later through circulation, machines, chemicals, impacts, cleaning, or other environmental exposure. And this is where our story becomes even more interesting. Imagine someone discovering an old box of coins in a family home. At first, they may see nothing special, just quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies accumulated over decades. Then one quarter catches the light differently. The owner notices an unusual feature near the lettering. Instead of spending it, they put it aside. They photograph it. They compare it with other examples. They ask a collector. Suddenly, an ordinary household object becomes the beginning of a numismatic investigation. That is how many fascinating collecting stories begin, not with a dramatic treasure chest, but with someone deciding to look twice. The 1966 quarter is particularly interesting because it belongs to a transitional period when collectors were already watching changes in American coin production. During this era, the mint was under enormous pressure to produce enough coins for everyday commerce. When production volume is high, collectors naturally become interested in unusual pieces that escape quality control and entered circulation. Possible areas of interest can include off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, die cracks, doubled features, struck through errors, missing design elements, unusual planchet problems, and other authenticated mint errors. But remember, simply seeing something unusual does not automatically make a coin rare. This is one of the biggest misconceptions in modern coin collecting. A scratch can look like doubling. A damaged rim can look like a clipped planchet. Machine damage can imitate a mint error. Even discoloration can create the illusion of a different metal composition. That is why serious collectors rely on comparison, measurements, diagnostics, and professional authentication when the stakes are high. Now think about the psychology of collecting for a moment. Why would someone spend years searching through thousands of coins just to find one unusual example? Because rarity creates a story. A coin is not valuable merely because it is old. It becomes interesting when its history, condition, scarcity, and demand come together. A common coin can be historically important but inexpensive. A rare error can be worth considerably more than an ordinary example from the same year. A coin with extraordinary preservation can attract attention because collectors want the finest known specimens. And a coin with documented provenance can become even more fascinating because collectors can trace where it came from and how it survived. This is why the idea of a 1966 quarter supposedly worth an astronomical amount captures people's imagination. The headline is exciting, but the real treasure hunt is figuring out whether the coin actually possesses characteristics that justify serious collector attention. Imagine finding one in an inherited collection. You place it under a lamp. You rotate it slowly. You check the date. You inspect the lettering. You compare the spacing with another 1966 quarter. You notice something different. Your heart starts beating faster. But then comes the most important question. Is it genuinely rare, or is your imagination getting ahead of the evidence? That question separates casual treasure hunting from serious numismatics. If you enjoy these discoveries, this is also the moment to subscribe and keep watching, because our journey does not stop with this coin. There are other American quarters with unusual histories, unusual reduction characteristics, and surprising collector interest, and one of the later coins in this series has an especially intriguing story that I am deliberately not revealing yet. So keep that curiosity alive, because once you understand what to inspect on one coin, you begin seeing American currency differently. Now let us talk about condition. A coin that spent decades circulating through vending machines, cash registers, pockets, and drawers can develop scratches, dents, wear, discoloration, and contact marks. A coin preserved immediately after production can look dramatically different. Collectors often use grading systems to describe preservation, and professional grading can be especially important for coins that appear unusually well preserved or potentially rare. A high-grade example can attract stronger attention than a heavily circulated example, but grade alone does not magically transform a common coin into a multi-million-dollar rarity. The combination matters. That is why you should never clean an interesting coin simply because you think it will make it look better. Cleaning can permanently damage the original surface and may reduce collector appeal. Instead, preserve the coin carefully, avoid harsh chemicals, and if you believe you have discovered a significant error or rarity, seek an experienced numismatic opinion. Another fascinating element is provenance. Imagine a coin that has been preserved in an old collection for generations, accompanied by photographs, receipts, auction documentation, or other records showing its history. Provenance does not automatically create rarity, but it can strengthen the story and help authenticate an important specimen. In the world of major coin collecting, stories matter. A mysterious coin with an unexplained origin may attract curiosity, while a properly documented coin can provide a much stronger foundation for serious evaluation. And this brings us back to that astonishing $66 million claim. If you encounter a video, advertisement, social media post, or online listing claiming that an ordinary 1966 quarter is worth $66 million, do not immediately believe it. Ask the questions that professional collectors ask. Is there a documented auction sale? Is the coin certified? What is the certification number? What exact error or variety makes it rare? Is the price an actual realized sale or merely an asking price? Who authenticated it? Can the claim be independently verified? These questions protect collectors from misleading valuations. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can learn from a coin is not the number attached to it, but how to recognize the difference between a real rarity and an exaggerated claim. Still, that does not mean you should ignore your change. Quite the opposite. Searching ordinary coins can be a fun and educational way to learn about minting history, varieties, errors, grading, and American economic history. You may not find a fortune every time, but you can find something much more important: knowledge. And every experienced collector started somewhere. Perhaps it was a coin inherited from a family member. Perhaps it was a quarter found in a drawer. Perhaps it was a strange-looking penny that sparked a lifelong interest. The thrill comes from the possibility that the next coin could teach you something you did not know. So if you have a 1966 quarter at home, take a second look. Do not assume it is rare, but do not throw it aside without examining it either. Look at the surfaces. Check the edge. Compare it with another example. Look for genuine mint-made characteristics rather than scratches or damage. And if something truly unusual appears, have it examined by someone who understands U.S. coin errors and varieties. That is the responsible way to turn curiosity into real numismatic research. Before we move on, I want you to remember one thing. Extraordinary valuation claims require extraordinary evidence. A headline may say millions, but collectors want proof. They want authentication, rarity, condition, and market evidence. That is the difference between a fascinating internet story and a genuinely important coin. And if you are watching this with a jar of old coins beside you, this is your reminder to slow down before spending them. The coin you think is ordinary might have an interesting feature, but you need to know exactly what you are looking at. Keep your eyes open, because the next coin we explore comes from another important chapter in American quarter production, and there is a reason collectors and treasure hunters find this era so fascinating. I am not going to reveal the claimed figure attached to that next coin yet, because the real mystery is not the number. It is what makes the coin interesting in the first place. So stay with us, because we are building toward a sequence of coins where each new discovery brings another question. What happened at the mint? How did the coin escape? And could someone today still find an overlooked example? For now, take one final look at that 1966 quarter. It may be ordinary, it may be unusual, or it may simply be a fascinating piece of American history. But whatever you do, never judge a coin by its face alone. Sometimes the smallest details create the biggest mysteries, and the next chapter of our journey is about to reveal another quarter that could make you look at your change very differently. Next, 1968 P quarter dollar. What if a quarter that looks completely ordinary at first could hide a production story that makes collectors stop, inspect, and compare every tiny detail? The 1968 P quarter belongs to a fascinating period in American coinage, and while spectacular online claims can attach enormous figures to unusual coins, the real mystery is discovering what characteristics could actually make a specimen stand apart. In this episode, we are going deeper than a simple price tag because the history, minting process, errors, condition, and authenticity all matter. And remember, the most intriguing part is still ahead. Another coin in this journey has its own surprising story, and I am keeping its claimed value secret for now, so you can focus on the clues rather than the headline. The late 1960s were a remarkable period for American coinage. The United States was still dealing with the consequences of the massive coin shortage that had affected circulation earlier in the decade. The transition away from traditional silver coinage had changed the composition of circulating quarters, and the mint was under pressure to keep enough coins moving through the American economy. Millions upon millions of pieces were needed for banks, businesses, vending machines, transportation systems, and everyday purchases. During a period of such intense production, collectors naturally become interested in pieces that escape the normal manufacturing process with unusual characteristics. The 1968 P quarter is therefore fascinating not because every example is automatically rare, but because it represents a moment when American coin production was changing and collectors were becoming increasingly attentive to unusual pieces. The Washington quarter design itself remained instantly recognizable. On the obverse, George Washington faces left, surrounded by inscriptions, while the reverse carries the eagle design. To someone spending money at a store, it is simply a quarter. To a collector, however, every part of that design can become evidence. The shape of letters, the spacing between elements, the strength of the strike, the rim, the edge, and the surface can all help tell the story of how a coin was produced and what happened to it afterward. One of the first things you should understand about a coin from this period is that not every strange-looking feature is a mint error. This distinction can save collectors from making expensive mistakes. A genuine mint error originates during the manufacturing process. Damage that happens after the coin enters circulation is something entirely different. For example, a coin can develop scratches from contact with other coins. It can be flattened by machinery. Its rim can become distorted after being dropped or struck. Chemical exposure can alter its appearance. Even attempts to clean the coin can create unnatural surfaces that may initially look mysterious. This is why professional collectors do not simply ask, "Does it look weird?" They ask, "Can I explain how this feature could have been created during minting?" That question is incredibly powerful. Consider an off-center strike. If a planchet is not properly positioned between the dies when the striking process occurs, part of the design may be missing and the blank metal may extend beyond the normal circular boundaries of the design. A dramatic off-center strike can be visually obvious. A minor one may be less spectacular, and its desirability can depend on how much of the design is affected and whether important identifying elements remain visible. Then there are broad strikes, where the coin is struck outside the retaining collar, allowing the metal to spread beyond the normal shape. There can also be clipped planchets, struck through errors, die cracks, cuds, and other unusual manufacturing characteristics. Each has a different appearance, and each requires careful evaluation. Doubling is another area that attracts enormous attention online. Collectors often hear phrases like double die and immediately assume a coin is valuable. But true double dies are specific varieties created during die preparation. While mechanical or machine doubling can occur during the striking process and generally has a different appearance, and collecting significance. That is why magnification alone is not enough. You need knowledge and comparison. If you find something unusual on your quarter, compare it with photographs of known varieties and, when necessary, consult a reputable expert. Now imagine discovering a 1968 P quarter inside an old coffee can that belong to a relative. You pour the coins onto a table and begin sorting them. Most are ordinary. Some are worn. A few have interesting dates. Then you pick up one quarter and notice that the lettering seems slightly different. You rotate it under the light. The surface looks unusually sharp. You check the rim. You turn it over. Something about the strike catches your attention. At that moment, you have two choices. You can assume it is nothing and put it back in the pile, or you can investigate. Serious collectors investigate. They photograph the coin. They weigh it with an accurate scale. They measure the diameter. They inspect the edge. They compare it against standard examples. They document what they see before doing anything that could damage the surface. That process is far more valuable than simply searching for a giant number online. And this is where the excitement of coin collecting really comes alive. A coin does not need to be worth a fortune to be fascinating. It can represent a manufacturing mistake, a technological challenge, a change in American monetary policy, or a piece of everyday history that survived for decades. The 1968 P quarter comes from an era when American society was changing rapidly, and the coins people carried in their pockets were silently recording that history. Imagine holding one in your hand and realizing that it may have passed through stores, restaurants, gas stations, vending machines, and countless hands before eventually reaching you. Every scratch and mark may tell part of its journey, although not every mark increases its value. In fact, heavy circulation usually reduces the collector appeal of ordinary coins. Condition becomes especially important when evaluating high-quality examples. Collectors look for sharp details, attractive surfaces, minimal contact marks, and strong overall preservation. Coins that have remained protected from circulation can be dramatically more desirable than worn examples. But once again, condition must be considered together with rarity. A beautifully preserved common coin can still be common. A rare error in moderate condition can sometimes attract far more attention. This is why coin collecting cannot be reduced to a simple age equals value formula. Older does not automatically mean more valuable, and newer does not automatically mean worthless. Rarity, demand, condition, variety, error status, provenance, and market history all interact. Now let us return to the spectacular claims surrounding supposedly multi-million-dollar quarters. When you see a claim involving an astronomical valuation, the responsible response is not excitement alone. It is investigation. Ask whether the figure represents an actual auction result. Ask whether it was merely an estimate. Ask whether the coin was professionally authenticated. Ask what exact characteristics supposedly creates the rarity. Ask whether independent sources confirm the claim. Online listings can contain unrealistic asking prices, while social media posts can repeat numbers without providing evidence. A real auction record is different because it represents an actual transaction under documented conditions. For collectors, that distinction is fundamental. And yet, even when a huge claim cannot be verified, it can still lead us toward a useful lesson. Learn how to inspect your coins. Because the real possibility is not that every quarter is secretly worth millions. The real possibility is that unusual coins do occasionally survive in collections, estates, rolls, jars, and everyday circulation, and the person who understands what to look for has a better chance of recognizing one. So what should you do if you find a suspicious 1968 P quarter? First, do not clean it. Do not polish it. Do not scrape the suspicious area. Do not attempt to improve the appearance. Place it somewhere safe and handle it by the edges. Take clear photographs under good lighting. Compare it with a normal example. Record its weight and dimensions if you have suitable equipment. Then seek an experienced numismatist or reputable grading and authentication service if the feature appears genuinely significant. This process protects the coin and protects you from false conclusions. One of the biggest dangers in modern coin collecting is confirmation bias. Once someone hears that a certain coin can supposedly be worth a staggering amount, they start seeing valuable errors everywhere. A small scratch becomes doubling. A stain becomes wrong metal. A dent becomes struck through. A normal design variation becomes rare variety. The excitement is understandable, but the solution is education. The more you learn, the better you become at separating genuine discoveries from ordinary damage. And if you are building a collection, keep notes. Record dates, mint marks, condition, source, and unusual features. Over time, your collection becomes more than a pile of coins. It becomes a research project. That is one of the reasons collectors remain fascinated by American coinage for decades. There is always another variety to study, another production technique to understand, another historical period to explore. And the 1968 P quarter sits in a particularly interesting chapter because the United States Mint was adapting to changing material, economic, and production pressures. The quarter had to remain familiar to the public while its underlying manufacturing environment was changing. That creates a fascinating intersection between history and numismatics. Think about the millions of quarters produced during this period. Most followed the intended design. Some experienced minor production imperfections. A much smaller number could display unusual errors or characteristics. And an even smaller number may have survived in remarkable condition. That is where rarity begins to become meaningful. The challenge for the collector is identifying which category a particular coin belongs to. Perhaps you have a coin in your house right now that you have never examined carefully. Maybe it came from an inherited collection. Maybe it has been sitting in a jar for years. Maybe you found it in a box of old coins purchased at a flea market. Before you dismiss it, look carefully. But also remember that curiosity should be combined with skepticism. Do not let an exciting headline make the decision for you. Let the evidence speak. If the coin has a genuine mint-made error, document it. If it is simply damaged, learn from that too. Every incorrect identification can become a lesson that helps you recognize a real rarity later. And there is another reason I want you to keep watching this series. We are not simply chasing sensational numbers. We are exploring the stories behind coins and the clues that collectors use to decide whether a coin deserves further attention. The next coin in our journey comes from another part of the American coin timeline, and it may challenge the way you think about what makes a coin fascinating. I am deliberately not revealing the claimed value because I want the mystery to remain intact. When that coin appears, I want you to look at it with the same mindset we used here. Examine the history, study the design, consider the manufacturing process, and ask what makes the piece genuinely different. So if you have been searching your change while watching this, do not stop. Keep your eyes open. Check the dates. Look at the mint marks. Examine the edges. Compare unusual features with authenticated examples. And above all, never clean a potentially valuable coin before having it evaluated. The surface you think is ugly may actually contain important evidence about the coin's history. As we approach the end of this chapter, remember that the most exciting part of collecting is not simply discovering a high number attached to a coin. It is the moment when you realize that something you once ignored has a story worth investigating. The 1968 P quarter is a perfect example of why context matters. It belongs to a period of transformation in U.S. coinage, and any unusual specimen deserves careful examination rather than an instant assumption. If you enjoyed this investigation, make sure you stay with us for the next chapter, because the next coin has another intriguing connection to American coin production, and there is a reason treasure hunters continue to search through old collections hoping to find an overlooked example. Again, I am keeping its claimed value hidden, because the real suspense is discovering why someone would care about that coin in the first place. You may have a box of coins sitting somewhere in your home right now, and perhaps one of them has never been inspected under proper lighting. Maybe nothing unusual is there, or maybe there is a detail waiting to be noticed. That is the beauty of numismatics. You never know what the next examination will reveal. So take another look at your coins, keep learning, and remember that the biggest mistake a collector can make is assuming that every coin tells the same story. Some are common. Some are historically significant. Some contain genuine errors. Some are simply beautiful survivors from another era. And every once in a while, a truly extraordinary piece appears and forces everyone to take a second look. The journey continues, and the next coin is waiting, ...